Palm Sunday is a day all about the parade. And if I'm being honest, I haven't always liked parades. As a member of the high school marching band, I had to play in many parades throughout my junior high and high school years. I also played the sousaphone, that 35-pound brass tuba beast that you're supposed to wear around your whole body like a Miss America sash. I didn't like marching in parades with that thing. We marched in the Memorial Day parade, and I hated it. Without fail, the weather was always unseasonably hot, the parade route was long, and I was hauling around a monstrous hunk of brass while wearing a wool uniform in May. We marched in the St. Patty's Day parade, and I hated doing that too. For 5 years in a row, against all odds, every time the St. Patty's Day parade was scheduled, it was cold and it was raining. 5 years in a row, it rained on St. Patty's Day parade. In the heat and in the cold, year after year, I asked myself, why am I even doing this? What is the point? Well, there was usually a point, or at least there was supposed to be. For the Memorial Day parade, we were marching in honor and respect of people who had been killed in war. And when on the parade route, I saw the weathered faces of our local American Legion branch, some faces that no doubt saw the deaths of friends in war, I felt a little bit less sorry for myself for sweating at a parade. We were marching for those who had lost, demonstrating that even in death, we remember their lives. St. Patty's Day was another story, though. I'm honestly not sure why we marched in that parade, what the point of it all was. In honor of the saint, presumably, but in practice, we stood in the cold rain for hours so that drunk attendees could throw their plastic beer cups and try and land them in the bell of my sousaphone, or toss green Jell-O shots to our band director, who usually laughed at this but did not consume the Jell-O shots. I still, to this day, struggle to find purpose in that parade, find the point. A good parade, however, has a good purpose. A good parade shows honor or respect to a person or an ideal. A good parade takes a stand against a wrong or an injustice. A good parade reminds us that the pain of the past is never greater than our hope in the future. Last summer, last June, I and over 1,000 people from across Pennsylvania paraded into the state capitol building to demand that fair funding be provided for all our public schools. We all wore bright red shirts, so there was this cool effect of a sea of crimson filling the center rotunda of the Capitol building, and speeches rising in chants, hopefully and passionately honoring the students who are shortchanged a decent education simply because of the zip code they happen to live in. People from wealthy communities, poor communities, rural communities, small towns, suburbs, and cities across hundreds of miles of our state gathered together for the benefit of all of our children. A good parade is for the good of others. La Asociación de Madres de Plaza de Mayo, or the Mothers of the May Plaza, have been marching outside of the executive building of Argentina in Buenos Aires for over 43 years now. And they march because from 1976 to 1981, for those 5 years, the government of Argentina abducted over 30,000 people that they considered to be a political threat. They were just gone, never to be seen again. These were people that the government labeled leftists, socialists, or otherwise enemies of the state, and so they silenced them. 30,000 people just disappeared without a trace. Your college roommate would leave for class in the morning and never return. Your father would go out for groceries and never return. Your neighbor would get up early on a Sunday morning to go to worship and never come home. Your daughter would leave for her high school theater practice and never return. The mothers and grandmothers of the disappeared, as they came to be called, held a parade. They gathered in front of the Casa Rosada, which means Pink House, which is sort of like our White House, the presidential mansion and office, and they met in the Plaza de Mayo, right outside that building. And in that small plaza, these grandmothers and mothers paraded around in a circle for hours on end with pictures of their disappeared loved ones to show that no matter what the government did, they would never forget their disappeared loved ones. And they would never forget the horrific actions of the people who perpetuated such a grotesque evil. These mothers and grandmothers of the main plaza have marched for decades, and they will not stop marching. On Palm Sunday, Jesus marches in a parade for a purpose. Like the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, Christ marches for the forgotten and the suffering. And he marches against all the injustice, sin, and death that disappear our beloved siblings. The Palm Sunday parade is a one-way parade. Christ knows that this parade ultimately leads to the cross and to his own death. But still, Christ marches on and freely accepts the pain, humiliation, and death that await him at the cross conclusion of the Palm Sunday parade. He marches onward and willingly accepts and confronts sin and death itself to destroy its power. Christ marches in solidarity and love with the suffering and the dying. On Palm Sunday, we join our cries with the people who first witnessed this Palm Sunday parade. And we shout, Hosanna, which literally means, oh, save, or save us. Jesus marches that one-way parade to the cross to save us from the power of injustice, sin, and death. Christ marches for the sinful and the suffering. Christ marches for the people who have lost jobs and aren't sure that they'll be able to make it much longer. Christ marches for the people with sick friends and family, but who are stuck alone because they cannot physically gather together. Christ marches for the people with COVID-19 on ventilators, fighting for their lives. Christ marches for the people continuing to work thankless jobs in box stores, grocery stores, gas stations, and pharmacies, and other places who are receiving poverty wages while putting their lives on the line. Christ marches for the physical and mental health professionals, doing their best to care for their patients in the midst of impossible situations. Christ marches for the children not really understanding what's going on, missing school, friends, teachers, family members. Christ marches for the prisoners, for homeless persons, for hungry persons. Christ marches for the people who are just exhausted, trying to relieve the suffering of others through work at food pantries and clothing giveaways and other ways. Christ marches for the people who are isolated and struggling with depression, anxiety, or addiction. Christ marches for the people isolated in an abusive home. Christ marches for those who are dying. Christ marches for those who have already died. Christ marches for every single person burdened by the power of sin, the power of fear, and the power of death. He marches for every person who cries out, Hosanna, oh save us. Christ marches onward toward the cross and shows us that he does not abandon us to the power of sin, shame, and death, but he confronts its ugly power head on, and he will not stop marching until we are all free from its power. Christ marches onward to show that God's promised hope is more powerful than the pain of the present. Christ marches for healing. Christ marches for hope. Christ marches for life abundant. This Palm Sunday, Christ marches for you. Amen.